Hello everyone. On this video we will be going over parts of a fraction. Okay, so starting off we have our numerator and our denominator. Okay, so your numerator is the value above the division line and the denominator is the value below the division line. One way to remember this that kind of helped me is when you think of denominator, think of down. So denominator down. That kind of gives you a hint that the denominator is the value on the bottom. All right, so let's look at a couple of examples of a fraction. Okay, so let's say if you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 equal parts. Okay, you have one whole shape cut into 5 equal parts. And what if we shaded in 2 of those parts? Okay, so that means that this fraction has 2 shaded parts and 5 total parts. That means this figure represents 2/5. All right, so let's go to the shape down here. Let's say if we have our one entire part, but we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 equal sections. Okay, so we have that one total figure cut into 6 equal sections. And if we shade in one of those sections. Okay, so just like above, we have one shaded section and 6 total parts. Okay, so this fraction will be represented by 1/6. All right, so I'm just going to roll this up a little bit. All right. So what if we have this circle here? And what if we decide to just shade in 3 of those? Okay, so we have 4 sections and we shade in 3 of them. Okay, so once again, we have 3 shaded sections and 4 total sections. That means this fraction will be represented by 3/4. All right. So if you are still writing, feel free to press pause. But we're going to go ahead and go on to the next page. Okay, and on this page, let me put this sheet behind it so the following page won't be seen through it. All right, let me focus. There we go. Okay, so let's say for this example, if you copy down these 2 shapes, say for this one, I shade in 3 sections. And for this one, I shade in 1 section. Okay, how would those be represented as a fraction? Okay, so what I want you to do is go ahead and press pause, and go ahead and work that out. Alright. So for figure A, you have 3 shaded. And you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 total. So you have 3 8s. Uh-oh. There we go. Oh. HT. 3 8. Kind of separate that a little bit. Okay, now for figure B, you have 1 section shaded, and you have 1, 2, 3, 4 total. Which is 1/4. All right, so you won't just use fractions for shapes. Sometimes you can have anything at all be represented by a fraction. Okay, so what if, so I'm going to scroll up a little bit. Let's say in this collection of letters, okay, say if you have A, C, C, and F. What fraction are A's? All right. So what I want you to do, go ahead and pause and see if you can write out a fraction to represent that. All right, so assuming that you've already pressed pause and worked this one out, let's go ahead and solve it. So we have A, C, C, F. So that means you have 4 A's out of 7 total letters. Move that over a little. Which means this will be represented by 4 7. All right. So if you're still writing, feel free to press pause, but we're going to go ahead and move on to our next page. Okay, so with this one, we're going to have 2 special circumstances for fractions. Okay, so what if we have the square here and we cut it into 3 sections? And what if we shade in all 3 sections? Okay, how would you write that as a fraction? All right, so we'll go ahead and solve that one if you haven't solved it already. You have 3 shaded over 3 total sections. That means you have 3 over 3, which is equal to 1. Okay, so quick side note. Any value divided by itself is equal to 1. Okay, so that means if you have 4 over 4, that's equal to 1. You have 9 over 9, that's equal to 1. If you have 250 over 250, that's going to equal to 1. And if you have 53,471 over 53,471, that's still going to equal 1. So any number divided by itself would automatically give you 1. Okay, so that's going to be really important in future sections. So you want to remember that. Alright, so let's say we have this value, this 1 square cut into 4 pieces. Or rectangle cut into 4 pieces. And you have none of them shaded in. So no shaded sections. How would you write that as a fraction? Alright, so you move this up a little. You have 0 shaded sections over 4 total sections. And that would just be 0 fourth, which is just 0. Okay, now with this one, again, a side note here. Zero divided by any non-zero number is always 0. Okay, so no matter what number is in that denominator, if you are dividing 0 by a non-zero number, it's always going to equal 0. So that means if you have 0 over 5, that's going to equal 0. If you have 0 over 1,000, that's going to equal 0. If you have 0 over 5,125, once again, that's going to equal 0. So no matter what, as long as you have a non-zero number in that denominator, if you have a 0 in your numerator, it's going to equal 0. Okay. Now, this is another little side note. If your denominator is 0, the fraction is undefined. Okay, so it's very important you don't mix up what happens when your numerator is 0 and what happens when your denominator is 0. So if you have 7 over 0, that's going to be undefined. And you're probably asking, why is that? Well, think of it here. If you have 0 shaded before total, then your answer is going to be 0, because that's how many are shaded. But in this case, if you have 7 over 0, that means you have 7 shaded over 0 total. Okay. So how are you going to have 7 shaded if you have 0 total sections? So let me clean this up just a little bit. Okay, so that's why whenever you have a 0 in the denominator, it's undefined. All right. So that was a quick introduction to parts of a fraction. Hopefully that made sense, and I will see you on the next video.